I walked out of my daughter's house on a crisp October morning, just as the leaves in Charlotte were turning gold. No goodbyes, no one waved from the porch. They didn't push me out the door, but they didn't ask me to stay either. My whole life, I poured everything into my daughter, every paycheck, every late-night shift, every dream I tucked away. I thought love like that would carve out a permanent place in her heart. But one simple question, asked over a plate of untouched apple pie, made me realize something devastating. To her, I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a dollar sign, a bank account to be tallied. So I left, and I started living again in a way I never expected. This is my story, and I hope you'll listen. My name is Maggie Ellison. Everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 67, living alone in a small clapboard house on the edge of Asheville, North Carolina. It's not much to look at. Peeling blue paint, a front porch that sags a little when I step on it. But it's mine. The quiet wraps around me like an old quilt, especially since Henry, my husband, passed 6 years ago. A heart attack took him, sudden as a summer storm. One minute he was pruning his roses, the next he was gone. I still talk to him sometimes when I'm watering those same roses out back. Silly, I know, but it keeps him close. My days are simple, now. I wake before dawn, when the sky's still soft and gray. I brew a pot of Earl Grey, let it steep until it's strong enough to wake my bones. Then I sit on the porch with Rusty, my scruffy rescue dog, curled up at my feet. His tail thumps against the wood like a heartbeat. I read the Asheville Citizen-Times, delivered every morning, bless them. The world feels gentle at that hour, just birds chirping, the occasional hum of a neighbor's truck. I don't feel lonely, not exactly. I call it chosen solitude. There's a difference. I'm a retired nurse, worked 35 years at the county hospital, bandaging wounds, holding hands, staying late when someone needed a kind word. I saved every spare dollar, tucked it away for emergencies, for my daughter Sarah. My pension's decent, $3,500 a month. Add to that a nest egg of $180,000, built from years of skipping vacations and mending my own clothes. But I told Sarah I only get $1,200 from Social Security. A lie, I know. I call it a careful truth. It started with a question she asked one day, casual as asking about the weather. "Mom, you getting by okay?" I don't know why I lied. Maybe it was something my neighbor Clara said, puffing on her pipe. "Maggie, if your kid knows you've got money, they'll start counting it before you're gone." I laughed it off then, but her words stuck like a burr in my sweater. I love Sarah. She's my only child. But love doesn't always see clearly. And that one question she asked, so simple, so innocent, unraveled everything I thought I knew about being her mother. What she did next, it broke my heart open in ways I never saw coming. I've always loved the way morning creeps over Asheville, slow and soft, like someone pulling a blanket over the mountains. My little house sits on a quiet street just past, where the pavement gives way to gravel. It's old with blue paint chipping like forgotten promises, and a porch that groans under my weight. But every creak feels like home. I've lived here 30 years, raised my daughter in these rooms, watched my husband, Henry, build a trellis for his roses out back. Those roses still bloom, red and stubborn, even after he's been gone 6 years. A heart attack took him one July afternoon. He was kneeling in the dirt, pruning shears in hand, humming an old Johnny Cash tune. I found him there, still as the earth. I miss him every day. Sometimes I swear I hear his laugh when the wind rustles the leaves. My routine keeps me steady. I wake at 5, before the sun's even thought about rising. I shuffle to the kitchen in my worn slippers, boil water for Earl Grey, and let it steep until the steam warms my hands. Rusty, my rescue dog, follows me everywhere, his paws clicking on the hardwood. I found him 2 weeks after Henry died, shivering behind the shed, all matted fur and hungry eyes. I fed him scraps of chicken and he never left. He's my shadow now, curling up beside me as I sip tea on the porch, watching the world wake up. I read the Asheville Citizen-Times, every word, even the obituaries. It's a habit from my nursing. Days, knowing who's still here, who's not. The paper's thin these days, but it's something to hold on to. I'm 67, retired after 35 years as a nurse. I worked in the county hospital, stitching cuts, calming fevers, holding hands through long nights. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. I saved every penny I could, skipping new dresses, driving the same beat-up Buick for 20 years. My pension's $3,500 a month, more than enough for my simple life. I've got $180,000 tucked away, 2 in savings bonds and a credit union account. It's not a fortune, but it's security, a buffer against broken hips or bad winters. I never told my daughter, Sarah, the truth about it. I said my pension was $1,200, just enough to cover groceries and the electric bill. It wasn't a lie born of mistrust, not at first. It was caution, a hedge against a fear I didn't want to name. Sarah's my only child. She's 38, now lives in Charlotte, 2 hours east if the traffic's kind. She's a CPA, sharp with numbers, always was. She married Greg, a banker with a quick smile and a habit of checking his phone mid-conversation. They've got a son, Noah, 10 years, old, with a laugh that could melt snow. I see Henry in him sometimes, in the way he tilts his head when he's thinking. Sarah sends photos now and then, Noah at soccer practice or blowing out birthday candles. I keep them in a shoebox under my bed, next to Henry's old watch. But visits? Those are rare. The last time Sarah came was for Henry's funeral, and even then she left early, said she had a deadline. I don't blame her. Life's busy. She's built something solid. A good job, a nice house, a family. I'm proud of her, truly. But pride doesn't fill the quiet spaces. We talk, if you can call it that. A text every couple of weeks. Hey, Mom, you okay? I reply. Doing fine, sweetheart. But it's like shouting across a canyon. I can't remember the last time she hugged me. Not one of those quick one-armed pats, but a real hug. The kind that says you're seen. Maybe it was when she graduated college, her cap slipping off as she ran to me laughing. I paid for that degree, every cent, working double shifts so she wouldn't have student loans. I never told her how many nights I fell asleep at the kitchen. Table, bills spread out like a puzzle I couldn't solve. I thought that's what mothers did. Gave everything quietly so their kids could fly. But there's a shadow that creeps in sometimes when I'm watering the roses or folding laundry. A question I don't want to ask. Does she love me, or what I can give her? It started with my neighbor, Clara, who lives across the street. She's 72, smokes a pipe that smells like burnt cherries, and has a way of saying things that stick. One evening, over lemonade on her porch, she leaned back and said, Maggie, you're retired now. If your kid knows you've got money, they'll start planning their future around it. Maybe not today, but someday. I brushed it off, laughed even. Sarah wasn't like that. She'd never ask me for a dime, but then she'd call, her voice, casual, asking, You still okay out there on your own, Mom? And Clara's words would echo, sharp and heavy like a stone in my pocket. I've seen it happen. Friends who signed over their savings to help a kid buy a house, only to end up clipping coupons for canned soup. Or Ellen, from my old book club, who gave her daughter $30,000 for a wedding, then spent last Christmas alone with a microwave dinner. It doesn't mean the kids are bad. It just means they're human, oblivious sometimes. I didn't want that to be us. I didn't want Sarah to look at me and see a safety net, a check to be cashed. So I kept my cards close, my accounts private, I paid my bills on time, Never borrowed, never asked for help. There's a strength in that, a quiet kind of power. It's not loud, not showy, but it's mine. Still, there are nights when I sit by the window, a mug of chamomile in my hands, and wonder if I'm being unfair. Sarah's my daughter. If I can't trust her, who can I trust? I ask myself that while I'm folding towels or stirring a pot of lentil soup, but then I think of Ellen or Mary, who moved in with her son and became a live-in maid until her back gave out. I don't want our love to be tested by a dollar amount I'm too proud to refuse, or one she's too desperate to ask for gently. So I stay quiet, keep my secrets tucked away, like the roses Henry planted, blooming only for those who know to look closely. I didn't know then, sitting on my porch with Rusty's head in my lap, that a single question from Sarah, asked over a summer lunch, would crack open everything I thought I understood about love, family, and what it means to be a mother. It was coming, though, and when it did, it changed me in ways I never could have imagined. It was one of those July afternoons when the air in Asheville felt thick enough to spoon. The heat pressed against my skin as I knelt in the backyard, pulling weeds from around Henry's roses. Their petals were drooping, begging for water, and I was halfway through filling the watering can when I heard tires crunching on the gravel drive. My heart did a little skip, thinking it was the delivery boy with my groceries. But then I saw it, a sleek black SUV pulling in, sunlight glinting off its hood. Before I could wipe the dirt from my hands, the back door flew open and Noah, my grandson, tumbled out, all skinny legs and a grin that could light up a storm. "Grandma!" he shouted, running toward me with his sneakers kicking up dust. Sarah and Greg followed, stepping out slower, like they were testing the ground. I dropped the watering can, brushed my hands on my apron, and caught Noah in a hug. His hair smelled like sunscreen and bubble gum, and for a moment I forgot the ache in my knees. Sarah smiled, her sunglasses perched on her head, and said, "Surprise, Mom. Thought we'd drop by." Greg nodded, his phone already in his hand, thumbs tapping away. I didn't care. My daughter, my grandson here in my yard. It felt like Christmas in July. Come in, I said, waving them toward the house. "I'll fix us something to eat." Inside, the kitchen turned into a whirlwind. I hadn't moved this fast in years. The stove hissed as I set a pot of water to boil. The ceiling fan creaked overhead, and Rusty wagged his tail so hard I thought he'd knock over a chair. I made chicken roasted with lemon and thyme, just the way Noah liked it when he was little. A potato salad with dill, because Sarah once said it reminded her of summer picnics. And for dessert, an apple pie, the crust golden and flaky, still warm from the oven. I wanted them to feel at home, to sit around my table and laugh like we used to when Henry was here, when Sarah was a girl and the world felt full of promise. We sat at the old pine table, the one Henry and I bought at a flea market our first year in Asheville. The windows were open, letting in a breeze that fluttered the checkered curtains. Noah chattered about his soccer camp, how he scored 2 goals last week. I refilled his glass with lemonade, watched his eyes light up when I slid an extra slice of pie his way. Sarah picked at her plate, polite but distant, her fork moving in slow circles. Greg kept glancing at his phone, muttering about emails. I tried not to notice, tried to focus on Noah's stories, but something felt off, like a song played in the wrong key. Then it came. Sarah set her fork down, leaned back, and asked, "So, Mom, how much do you get from Social Security these days? Enough to get by?" Her voice was light, like she was asking about the weather or if I still grew tomatoes. But there was a sharpness in her eyes, a calculation that made my stomach twist. I froze, my hand hovering over the pie tin. I'd heard that question before, in phone calls, in passing, but this time it felt different, heavy. I forced a smile, the kind I used to give patients when I didn't want them to worry. "Oh, not much," I said. "About $1,200 a month. Just enough for groceries and the bills." Sarah nodded, her lips pressed tight. Greg looked up from his phone, just for a second, and caught her eye. It was quick, a glance so brief I almost missed it, but it landed like a pebble in still water, rippling through me. Something unspoken passed between them, and I felt it, sharp and cold in my chest. I changed the subject fast, babbling about the roses, how they were struggling in this heat, how Rusty chased a squirrel up a tree last week. Noah giggled, but Sarah and Greg stayed quiet, their smiles thin, like they were waiting for something else. After lunch, I cleared the plates, my hands moving on autopilot. Noah ran outside to toss a ball with Rusty, his laughter echoing through the open window. Sarah and Greg stayed in the living room, their voices low, murmuring. I should have left it alone. I should have kept washing dishes, kept my head down. But something pulled me closer, a mother's instinct maybe, or just a fear I'd been ignoring too long. I stood by the doorway, out of sight, the dish towel still in my hands, and listened. Sarah's voice came first, clear and sharp. "She's got more than she's letting on, Greg. I saw a bank statement last time I was here tucked in her desk. At least $180,000, probably more. She's playing broke, but she's not." Greg's voice was lower, measured. "If she's sitting on that kind of money, we could use it. Noah's school fees are only going up, and the mortgage isn't getting any lighter. Maybe we talk to her about moving to a smaller place. Or, one of those senior homes. Her house could sell for a good chunk." I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. My breath caught, like I'd been dunked in cold water. A senior home? My house. This wasn't just about money. They were planning my life, carving it up like a pie they hadn't even tasted. I waited, hoping I'd misheard, hoping Sarah would laugh, say it was a joke, but she didn't. "She'd be fine in a place like that," Sarah said, her voice cool, practical. "She's getting older. She shouldn't be out here alone anyway. It's for her own good. For her own good." Those words burned, hotter than the July sun outside. I slipped back to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I gripped the sink. The pie tin sat there, half-eaten, the crust crumbling where Noah had dug in. I'd spent hours rolling that dough, slicing apples, sprinkling cinnamon, thinking it would bring us closer. But all they saw was a bank statement, a house to sell, a mother to move out of the way. I didn't cry, not then. I just stood there, water dripping from my hands, staring out the window at Noah tossing his ball. He was so happy, so unaware. I wanted to hold on to that, to believe Sarah still loved me, that this was a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew. That glance between them, those whispered plans, they weren't about love. They were about numbers. And I was just a figure on their ledger. I called Noah inside, gave him another slice of pie, and smiled like nothing was wrong. Sarah and Greg said their goodbyes soon after, promising to visit again. Real soon. I waved from the porch as their SUV pulled away, dust swirling in its wake. But as I turned back to the house, the roses, the quiet, I felt something shift inside me. A thread I'd been holding on to, woven from years of sacrifice, was starting to unravel. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that question, was the beginning of a truth I wasn't ready to face, a truth that would break my heart and set me free. The weeks after Sarah's visit felt heavier than the July heat. I kept replaying her question about my pension, that glance she shared with Greg, their whispered plans about my house. My roses drooped despite my care, and even Rusty seemed to sense the quiet that settled over me, nudging my hand more often with his wet nose. I told myself it was nothing, just a misunderstanding. Sarah was busy, stressed. She didn't mean it, but the doubt lingered, like a bruise you don't notice until you press it. Easter was coming, My favorite holiday since Henry and I were newlyweds. Not for the church services or the candy, but for the noise. Sarah's laughter as a girl. Henry humming hymns while peeling potatoes, the clatter of dishes in the sink. I hadn't had a full table since he passed, but I held on to hope. I called Sarah a week before, left a voicemail. "Honey, I'm making ham and your favorite scalloped potatoes for Easter. Bring Noah, Greg. Come stay the weekend." No answer. I texted too, kept it light. "Just let me know if you're coming. Love you." Nothing. Still, I prepared like they'd show up any minute. That Sunday, I woke at 4, the sky still dark. I glazed the ham with honey and cloves, sliced potatoes paper thin, baked a coconut cake because Noah loved it last time he visited. I set table with my good china, the plates Henry's mother gave us for our wedding. I even drew a bunny on Noah's napkin with a marker, like I did when he was little. Every few minutes I checked my phone. No messages. I peeked out the window, hoping to see their SUV rolling in. The driveway stayed empty. By noon, the ham was cooling, the potatoes turning gluey. I called again, straight to voicemail. I left another message, my voice softer this time. "Sarah, just checking if you're on your way. Everything's ready. No rush, okay?" 1 o'clock came, then 2. I sat at the table, the candles flickering, and poured myself a glass of iced tea. Across the street, Clara's house was alive. Cars parked bumper to bumper, her grandkids chasing each other in the yard, laughter spilling out like music. I wasn't jealous, not exactly, but the quiet in my house felt louder than ever, like it was shouting back every hope I'd held on to. By 4, I gave up. I wrapped the food in foil, blew out the candles, and carried the plates back to the cabinet. Rusty followed me, his tail low. I didn't cry, but my chest ached, a dull, familiar pain. I thought about Henry, how he'd squeeze my hand and say, "They'll come around, Maggie." But he wasn't here, and they hadn't come. I dumped the tea down the sink and whispered to Rusty, "It's just us, buddy." That night, I lit a candle by Henry's photo on the mantel, the one from our trip to the Smoky Mountains. "Nobody showed, Henry," I said. "Maybe next year." The flame flickered, but it didn't answer. A week later, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I needed to see Sarah, to feel like her mother again. I packed a suitcase, filled a basket with gifts, jars of orange marmalade I'd made last fall, a tin of shortbread cookies for Noah, a wooden puzzle set I thought he'd love. I didn't call ahead. I was afraid she'd say no, or worse, hesitate. Hesitation from your own child cuts deeper than any words. So I decided to surprise them, maybe foolish for a woman my age, but my heart was hungry for family, for Noah's, laugh, for anything to fill the empty spaces. I took the bus to Charlotte, 3 hours of winding roads and stale air. My knees ached, my back complained, but I didn't care. I pictured Noah's face when he saw the puzzle, Sarah smiling over the marmalade. The bus dropped me at the station, and I took a cab to their house, a tidy brick place in a neighborhood with neat lawns and too many mailboxes. Noah spotted me first, running out the door before I could pay the driver. "Grandma!" he yelled, throwing his arms around me. I held him tight, breathing in his warmth, and for a moment everything felt right. Sarah came out next, her face flickering with surprise. "Mom, you didn't say you were coming." Her voice was polite, but her eyes darted to the cab pulling away. I brushed it off, smiled. "I must have forgot to text, honey. Been a busy week. Can I stay a few days?" She nodded a little stiff. "Sure, come in. It's chilly out." Greg was at work, she said, but he'd be home later. She led me to a small room off the garage, more storage than guest space, with a fold-out couch and a single bulb flickering overhead. "It's cozy," I said, ignoring the damp air. "Perfect for me." That night I cooked dinner. Pumpkin soup, warm and creamy with crusty bread and roasted carrots. I thought it'd bring us together like old times. But Sarah brought home pizza, said Noah was picky these days. The soup sat untouched, congealing in the pot. I smiled, said I understood. But inside, something tender curled up tight. I kept busy, helping Noah with his math homework, folding laundry, sweeping their porch. I wanted to be useful, to feel like I belonged, but Sarah was distant, always on her phone. Greg came home late, gave me a quick nod, then disappeared to his office. I told myself they were tired, that's all. Then came the night that broke me open. It was Wednesday, after another dinner of takeout, Chinese this time, greasy cartons scattered on the counter. I was washing dishes, the water hot against my hands, when I heard their voices from the dining room. Low, serious, like they didn't want to be heard. I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, and stepped closer, my heart pounding. I knew I shouldn't listen, but I couldn't stop myself. Sarah spoke first, her voice sharp but hushed. "We can't keep dancing around this, Greg. Mom's not safe living alone. She's 67, for God's sake. What if she falls? We've got to get her into a senior home." Greg murmured something I couldn't catch, then added, "I called Meadowview today. They've got openings. We'd need to prove she's not fit to manage her finances, but her memory's spotty enough to make a case." Sarah sighed. "Good. Once she's settled, we can sell her house. It's worth at least 300 grand. That'd cover Noah's college, maybe a new car." I gripped the counter, my knees buckling. Meadowview? A senior home? My memory wasn't spotty. I could recite every patient's chart from my last shift if you ask. And my house, the one Henry and I built our life in, reduced to a college fund. I waited, my breath shallow, hoping I'd misheard. But Sarah kept going. "I found their brochure in her desk last time we visited. She's been hiding money, Greg. 180,000 at least. If we get power of attorney, we can manage it for her. For Noah's future." The twist hit me like a slap. This wasn't just about money. They were plotting to strip me of my home, my freedom, my life, to declare me unfit, like I was some burden to be managed. I backed away, my hands trembling, and slipped into the guest room. I sat on the couch, the springs creaking under me, and stared at the wall. The marmalade jars in my suitcase, wrapped in a towel to keep from breaking, felt like a cruel joke. I'd come to love them, to be their mother, their grandmother, and they were planning to lock me away. The next morning, I packed my things before dawn. I didn't wake them. I left a note on the kitchen counter, scrawled on a napkin. Heading: "Back to Asheville. Thanks for letting me stay. Love to Noah." I called a cab, rode to the bus station, and bought a ticket home. As the bus pulled away, Charlotte fading into a blur of streetlights, I clutched my bag and let the truth settle in. My daughter didn't see me as a mother. She saw me as a problem to solve, a bank to empty. And that truth, raw and jagged, was more than I thought I could bear. The bus ride back to Asheville felt like a lifetime, the hum of the engine blending with the ache in my chest. I stared out the window, watching the Blue Ridge Mountains roll by, their peaks soft against the dawn. My suitcase sat at my feet, the jars of orange marmalade still nestled inside, their labels smudged but legible. "For Noah," I'd written, in careful script. I didn't know if he'd ever taste them, but I held on to them anyway, like a promise I wasn't ready to break. Sarah's words echoed in my head. Not angry, not cruel, just cold. "Meadowview, power of attorney, for Noah's future." Each syllable cut deeper than I thought possible, not because she wanted my money, but because she wanted to erase me to get it. When I stepped off the bus, Asheville greeted me with a chilly breeze, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I walked home, my steps slow, the gravel crunching under my boots. Unlocking the door, I was met by the familiar creak of the hinges, the faint smell of lemon, polish I used on the floors. Rusty bounded toward me, his tail wagging like he'd been waiting forever. I knelt down, buried my face in his fur, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. This house, with its chipped paint and sagging porch, was mine. No one could take that away. Not Sarah, not Greg, not their plans for a senior home. I didn't unpack right away. Instead, I sat in Henry's old armchair, the one by the window, where he used to read the paper. The cushion still held the shape of him, like a memory pressed into fabric. I thought about Sarah, my little girl, who once clung to my legs when thunderstorms roared, who drew me pictures of hearts and flowers. Where had she gone? Or had I been so busy loving her, sacrificing for her, that I missed the moment she stopped seeing me? I thought about my savings, the $180,000 I'd tucked away, every dollar a piece of security I'd built for her, for Noah, for emergencies I hoped would never come. I'd always pictured handing it over one day, maybe to help, with a medical bill or a dream too big for her paycheck. But now I saw it differently. That money wasn't love. It was a weight, a chain I'd let bind us both. The next morning I walked to a small law office downtown, a place I'd passed 100 times but never entered. It smelled of coffee and old books, and the lawyer, a young man with kind eyes, listened as I laid out my wishes. I, Margaret Ellison of Asheville, North Carolina, declare this my last will and testament. My voice didn't waver. I left enough for my funeral, simple and quiet, no fuss. A portion went to the local library where I'd read to kids on Saturdays, their faces lighting up over stories of dragons and pirates. The rest, every cent, I gave to a charity that helped seniors stay in their homes, women like me, who wanted to keep their gardens, their porches, their freedom. When it came to Sarah, I paused, then said, I leave my daughter nothing. Not because I don't love her, but because I've learned that love can't be bought. Not with money, not with sacrifice. The lawyer nodded. No judgment, just understanding. Back home, I felt lighter, like I'd set down a load I'd carried too long. I started living for me. I signed up for a painting class at the community center, my hands clumsy with the brush, but happy to try. I took Rusty on longer walks, past the river where the water sparkled like it had secrets to share. I sat with Clara on her porch, her pipe smoke curling into the air, and we talked about life, not as mothers or widows, but as women who'd earned their scars. I planted new roses, yellow ones, for no reason other than they made me smile. I wasn't running from the pain. I was building around it, brick by brick, a life that didn't need Sarah's approval to feel full. 3 months later, my phone rang. Sarah's name lit up the screen and my heart stuttered. I let it ring twice, then answered. Hi, Mom, she said, her voice softer than I remembered, like she was testing the waters. Things have been tough. Greg's got this business idea, a startup. We just need a little help to get it off the ground. A loan, maybe. Not much. I leaned back in my chair, the phone cool against my ear. I knew this moment was coming, had felt it building since that summer lunch. I took a breath, steady, and said, I'm sorry, Sarah, I don't have it. I donated everything, the savings, all of it, to the library, to a senior charity. It's gone. The line went quiet. Then her voice came back, sharp, almost a hiss. You what? That was our money, Mom. For Noah, for our family. You gave it to strangers? I closed my eyes, picturing her face, the girl I'd rocked to sleep, the woman who'd planned to put me away. It was my money, Sarah, I said, calm but firm. I saved it for you once. But you never asked if I was warm enough in that garage room you gave me. Never tasted the soup I made with love. You didn't see me, not really. Love isn't a debt you collect because I'm your mother. She tried to argue, her voice rising, but I cut her off. Sarah, if Noah ever treated you the way you've treated me, how would you feel? Silence. Then a click. She hung up, set the phone down, my hands steady, and looked out at the roses, their yellow petals catching the light. I didn't cry. I felt free. Not angry, not bitter, just untethered, like a kite finally cut loose from a string that was holding it too tight. I deleted her old texts that night, the ones I'd clung to like lifelines. Sorry, Mom. Busy week. We'll call soon. They weren't love. They were placeholders, and I didn't need them anymore. I started volunteering at the library again, reading to kids with sticky fingers and wide eyes. Their laughter filled me in a way Sarah's calls never did. I baked cookies for Clara, sat with her as the sun set, and realized family wasn't just blood. It was the people who saw you, who stayed. One April morning, as the mountains bloomed with dogwoods, I was pruning the roses when I heard gravel crunch. A car pulled in, Sarah's SUV. My heart skipped, but I stayed still, shears in hand. Noah ran out first, his sneakers pounding the ground. Grandma, he shouted, wrapping his arms around me. I hugged him back, breathing in his warmth. Sarah stepped out, slower, her face softer, almost fragile. Greg wasn't with her. Hi, Mom, she said, her voice small. Can we talk? I nodded, led them inside. Noah played with Rusty in the yard, while Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands twisting together. I'm sorry, she said, eyes on the floor. I didn't see it then, how I hurt you. Greg and we got caught up in money and plans. I thought I was doing right by Noah, but I was wrong. About you, about everything. I listened, quiet, letting her words settle. I didn't rush to forgive, didn't promise everything would. Be okay. But I saw her, really saw her, maybe for the first time in years. Not my little girl, not my betrayer, but a woman learning what love costs. I poured us tea, set out the marmalade I'd saved for Noah. We talked, not about money or houses, but about small things. His soccer games, my painting class. When they left, I hugged Noah, then Sarah. Her arms lingered, a real hug, the kind I hadn't felt in years. I didn't know if we'd rebuild, if trust could grow again. But I knew I'd be okay, with or without her. I'd found my own roots, deep and strong, in the life I'd built for me. What did you think of my story? Has your child ever asked what's in your bank account? Or have they asked if you're warm enough, if you're happy? I spent years saving, not because I loved money, but because I loved my daughter. I thought sacrifice was enough to keep us close, but I learned a hard truth. No one owes you love, not even your own child. Love isn't a transaction, a check you cash or a debt you pay. It's a choice, every day, to see each other. And sometimes, the truest love is the one you give yourself. I found mine in yellow roses, in library laughter, in mornings with Rusty by my side. Family isn't always blood. It's the people who make you feel seen, who remind you you're enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, share yours below. And if you want more stories like this, quiet and honest, subscribe to our channel. We're here for the mothers the world sometimes forgets.